ANA eLearning Academy is brought to you by CDN Graysheet, a trusted source of rare coin and currency valuations since 1963.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for the ANA eLearning Academy. The ANA would like to thank our partner Graysheet for their support of the eLearning Academy. Today we have Walt Ostromecki, who will be presenting on Money of the Afterlife, aka To the Hell with Money. If you have any questions during this presentation, you will be muted, so please put them in either the chat or the Q&A, and I will read them to Walt at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, here is Walt.
Okay, Logan, thank you for that introduction, and thank you all that are attending, whether it's nationwide. I hope you enjoy this particular program. The title usually catches folks, especially the hell with money part of it. But this is a hobby, a field that you can collect that's inexpensive. You can have a lot of fun with it. And to me, there's just so much behind it, so much history that can be gained from what we call Hell Banknotes, as you'll see. And we'll move on to here. We'll start our little slide program. Originally, this program was developed for the Michigan State Show in 2014 as their guest speaker. But who doesn't love money? Who doesn't love money in any form, whether it's legal tender or whether it's a collectible field like this? Well, this says it all. Money is made to be burned in more ways than one. I'm sure you'll know. You can burn it by spending. But people of all ages love to burn money, and we'll figure out where that tie-in comes to today's program on Hell Banknotes. If you got nothing better to do in your fireplace someday, you can burn your money in large denominations, and just a little sample of it. But it's interesting to note that while having fun, Hell Banknotes can also produce some strange behaviors in people. If you recall the television series, a number of years back, which was the FBI X-Files team, was often called in to investigate these strange going-ons. And here we see youngsters, if you want to say it, or an individual dressed up, made up, and is that actually eating Hell Banknotes? Well, according to the team of agents Mulder and Scully, there's definitely something unusual or paranormal here. One of their entire television shows in the 9th season featured a trainload full of Hell Banknotes. This is just one of the slides from that particular scene as we're going to discover it. But anyway, I thought it bared further investigation on their part, and hopefully it'll bear further investigation on our part. The history behind the Hell Banknote and the Chinese mythology and meaning of the word hell. No, the word doesn't offend anyone, but it's not meant to. But this is where we're going to begin our actual program and talk this afternoon. But a flashback to many centuries ago in Chinese lore and mythology, when the meaning of the word hell and the Buddhist temples dealt with the lore that surrounded what was called at that time spirit money. When the Western Christian missionaries first began coming to China in the early 1880s, they brought their definition of hell. And that definition was a bad place of eternal damnation, suffering for evildoers on earth. These missionaries claimed that all non-converted Chinese to Christianity would die and go to hell and suffer forever and ever and ever. However, in Chinese mythology, the word hell did not carry that same negative connotation as in the West. Chinese religious mythology stated the spirit of all who die will automatically enter the underworld, which is known as hell, to be judged before being sent to either, I misspelled a word, there's one I missed, heaven, to be punished, or to live in the underworld, or to be reincarnated. The Chinese afterlife, thus, is a good place where earthly dead continue to live on the same and do the same things they did on earth when they were alive, such as eating, working, traveling, playing sports, collecting numismatic items, collecting, praying, etc. And all of this required money to do so. Hence, there was a need for money in the afterlife to live comfortably pending the final judgment in Chinese mythology. Well, here's a terrible scene from the Western worldview that the missionary said, the judgment and so forth. Don't want to dwell on the negative. Let's move on to the Eastern religion and mythology behind it. And a particular view of hell, I had to cover up spots here, I apologize for that. But particular, hell is a happy afterlife place filled with eternal peace, joy, love, pleasures of life, and money. So if you want to become a collector in the afterlife, here's a place to start. And money was needed, as we shall discover. Hell is a good place and not a bad place. That's our premise here behind the notes. Yes, there's an obvious language misunderstanding barrier between East and West. And that started off the whole idea, but as you'll see, it turned out to be good. Early Chinese forms of Buddhist or spirit money, which eventually became called in the Western world as money of the afterlife, and then later Hell Banknotes. First, oops, sometimes my finger gets ahead of itself. First up, the Buddhist temple altar prayer notes, and then we have a Buddhist gravesite ceremonial notes. These are two definite fields or areas of Hell Banknotes. And these early ones, as you see here, from about the early 1900s, they were used. Many of them were colorful. They had various designs, reds, yellows, blues. But notice how intricately detailed these items are. These particular ones are on rice paper, or the ones back in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s are on silver foil or gold foil mixed with rice paper. But notice some of the isometric designs. Take a look at the special foils. You can't see them. I don't, in a live presentation, I can pass them around and show them to the audience. But these are just some of the early beginnings of that. Let's get one more here. There we go. 2019, this is a modern day Chinatown. And here in Los Angeles, where I live, these are notes that you can find at any shrine temple called Spirit of the Afterlife prayer notes. Now, these are very, very thin, about the same thing you'd get on like an aluminum foil. And they're woodcut prints on this particular item. These are a couple of different styles. Below is a 2008 modern day Hong Kong Buddhist temple style printed for Hell Banknotes as well. And we'll take a closer look in just a moment at some of these notes and what they are. Here we have two featured, top and bottom, two obverse designs. These notes also have reverses, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the program. This is an obverse of a Buddhist temple and gravesite notes for family use with the happiness theme. Now, if you take a look at the designs, in the center, you have the Emperor of Hell, and we'll get to him in just a bit, how he got that position, what's his role, what does he do, and why is he pictured on notes. But we'll see the top one in blue is one dealing with a family relative that had passed away. And this is a note that can be at a prayer temple or altar, or it can also be on a makeshift altar at the gravesite. But both of these themes, and notice the one below it in green, the large denomination value, it has all sorts of happy themes, bright future speaking. Look at the people playing instruments. Look at the various flowers. You find lotus flowers here in other areas. So this has a specific happiness theme for a deceased or for a long deceased relative. This is a gravesite after the funeral, a tear-off Hell banknote. Now the top note with the arrows, red arrows on it, the size of that note is 24 inches by 18 inches. That's a big note. But it'll cost you, yeah, you might pay $1 for it if you find one hole. But this is the obverse of a Buddhist note. There's a gravesite tear-off. The arrows are there because a piece has been torn off and burned at the altar or an urn set up at the gravesite ceremony. Now, these Buddhist ceremonies in cemeteries are noisy. They're bugles, they're loud. I wish we could record them here, but it's hard to do that on a program such as this. But if you ever attended one, and you're free to attend as long as you make a donation on the way out, not Hell Banknotes, that is, for the Buddhist temple itself. But they're used and burned. There are the reverses below it. And we see it was torn off on the top one. Again, this is a gravesite or temple note used in a prayer ceremony for the death of a baby or even a very young child. And again, you will note a couple of features that I have indicated in red or arrows. And in the center, you find a banknote. Okay, what it's actually pointing to, and we'll cover this a little bit later as we move on, but the building there below, the Buddhist style building, is the Bank of Hell. Yes, there is an actual bank in hell. And we'll talk about the individual that runs the bank and is also the emperor of hell. But also on the left side, you'll notice the baby praying as well. Prayer is very important in many of the religious ceremonies for the Chinese. On the right, you have a mother praying as well. And notice the halo over her head. And notice the beautiful scenery in back. And mother is observing with prayers ascending to hell. And in this particular case, it's a 1 million value that's being deposited in the Bank of Hell. San Francisco in 1986, for example, I stopped by a Buddhist temple. And this is what you'll see there as you're entering the cemetery graveyard. There, it's a Buddhist area. And as you come in the opening gates, there's this huge, it looks like furnace. What we see here is a woman making a direct deposit of Hell banknotes for the deceased loved ones in and out at the cemetery. And on the Buddhist temple altar, where she has picked up some notes or brought her own, we find that the gravesite especially has extra special banknotes used along with prayer for the loved ones. So these are provided at any kind of ceremony. You take a look at the center, you see Buddhists being a symbol. Here we have what looks like a woman Buddha. Very seldom to see that. But this is for a loved one to gain favor in the afterlife. Sometimes the priest there or the Buddhist priest say, well, you really have to bribe the emperor of hell. Well, maybe not, but this is from 2012. It's an issue that's in Koreatown here in Los Angeles. Again, all these notes I picked up at the small, actually no cost, but as a donation. Starting about 2000, these other designs that we've seen are about to go away. The example of the Buddhist spirit money, now called a Hell banknote. These are mass produced by called the Josh Paper Company and used for praying for the dead and parishioners. The practice of lighting, it's just like the practice of lighting candles for an altar for a Catholic church or mass. This is from Hong Kong, 2008. They're on rice paper pads, and you just tear one off and send your prayers on. Well, let's move on and take a look at some of the many different types of colorful, printed, and collectible Hell banknotes over the years. Again, as I mentioned earlier, each of the banknotes tends to have a meaning behind it, which is being conveyed on the particular note. Now, notice the Emperor of Hell is offset rather than being in the center. Interesting here, it's a 2 billion value. Well, a couple of these I'll pay off down some of our debt here in the United States. But it's a Hell banknote dealing with the afterlife. Now, if you'll notice on the left side, you'll see a sailing ship. You'll see fish. You'll see beautiful sceneries of islands. This has a symbolism to mean sailing into a better life in the afterlife. So that's just a basic, simple meaning behind this particular note. Here's some of the other designs and types and meanings of collectible notes. Now, most of the collectors collect from about late 60s through about 2000. The reason 2000, many of these notes were produced in Hong Kong, of course, and was it 1997, Hong Kong was turned over to mainland China. And they mass produce these under what's called Josh paper. I don't collect those because they don't have any real interest or meaning. The symbolism isn't there, and they're mass produced. They're ugly. They're not as detailed on the obverse and reverse as some of the other notes of ours. But the top one deals with something we're celebrating, the year of the dog and the value. The Emperor of Hell is there. We got a 50 note one. Well, let's take a look at some of the first or smallest notes. These have been around since the late 1960s and perhaps even earlier, that are called the red and green type. And they have, most of them have isometric designs, and they're very intricate. You use a magnifying glass to see the detailed artistry that went in producing this note, which is going to be sort of lost, as I'll put for now, as it's set on fire. But these are the most common, and they are the 3x5 or smaller size notes from the 80s. Emperor of Hell being in the middle. The second tile is an obverse of another small size common note, a 3x5 size, a little more intricate detail. So these begin, this is about 1980. And now here's the reverse of some of those small notes, 2x3 to 4x5 inches. Many small ones do not have backs. Some of them do. You can see number 3 there that's highlighted. You're seeing the obverse. Nothing is printed on the back. Most of those that are printed on the back from the 1970s and 80s will have the Bank of Hell. Whoops, my finger slipped. We'll have the Bank of Hell on it, and we'll get to, again, a little bit more. The next most common style is, because an obverse of the green-black issues, are also very plentiful in layout designs. Very familiar for each note and printer. You take a look at the Emperor on the top, and you'll see one design, and lo and behold, the second one, you have a new, younger Emperor. And the one on the bottom as well has an even newer new design of the Emperor. So it's sort of like what Great Britain does to the Queen when they picture her on notes and so forth. They age the Emperor of Hell gracefully. The obverse, again, this is the next set of series, the black-green. Now the difference here, the green-black is the other one. The green is the main feature of the color. And these are standardized issues, which came about in the early 1980s. And the Hell Banknote was printed on a 4x6 side. Regardless of denominations, they were all the same size, much like US currency. And they have both the old style and new styles. C, the lower one there, has both the modern and the old style depiction of the Emperor of Hell, or actually the person in charge of the bank. These are the mass-produced notes, starting probably in the late 1990s, going on into 2000. This is a mass-produced standard issue reverse, printed on black and some in green only. You notice the variations in colors are all, again, the same size. The note D has a different style of pagoda. Take a look at it, circled. So there are many variations. Why the variations? Various different printers, people that issued these notes, especially in Hong Kong or in Macau, where a great majority of these from the 60s, 70s, 80s, up through about 2000 were printed and issued. Well, as I mentioned, the trading companies were the printers of these notes up, especially in Hong Kong, up until about 2000. If you look at the purple arrow, you see on the top note, Ing Du Hong Ning, Ying Hong, this is the producer or the trading company that would make these. Again, these are on very thin paper. There, you touch it, it crumbles easily. The next one shows another different printer, and the other one shows a different printer, which also talks about it being a trading company. Printing paper used for most Hell banknotes from 65 to 2000 was rice paper. But here we have something unusual, and this is why I like to collect this. To me, is the fun to find something printed on a different paper. Now, there's no printer's label here to know who printed it, but this is on corrugated stock. And it's about the late 1970s. The reverse is blank. Now, this is the obverse of the note. Why were these printed? Now, probably an emergency print issue on the only paper that was available from the particular company. We find other unusual designs. Special issue, Hell banknotes. Prints over regular Chinese issues. Now, here we find this is an early note from 1936 of 5 Young from the Central Bank of China, before we know it as mainland China today. Most unusual, it's from Hong Kong or the Republic of China. And what they did here is they have a portrait printed here of Sun Yat-sen, and they've added a portrait of Richard Nixon, who just recently passed away. Today's communist countries would never permit this to happen because this old mainline China form no longer exists. Some early Hell banknotes from the 1920s to the mid-40s. These are notes on a regular issue printing paper with a brown ink on one side and also $100 denominations. They look very much like real Chinese currency circulating at that particular time. These 3 examples, and A especially, look like the regular Chinese notes that were in circulation from the 30s. These are about 1940 issues. Notice they have the same Emperor of Hell on it. These are actual banknotes. They're in terrible condition, but it shows the history. So Hell banknotes had a major influence on regular produced currency from mainland China, Taiwan, Formosa as it's called too, but they portrayed those figures. Here's an example. It's a reverse of the old 100 yuan note from about the 1930s. This is on the regular circulating note. It's not a Hell banknote, but the front looks like, go back up here, it says bottom one here, where the A is, that's the back of that particular note. Notice the beautiful flying dragon here. No fire breathing. These dragons have a mystical form in China. Well, let's get on with the subtopic or subtitle of this program. To hell with the bank. Yes, there is a bank of hell, as I'm sure you've already discerned, in the afterlife, as well as an emperor or lord who oversees the bank and the afterlife world. We're going to spend a little time here sharing some of that history. You know about how the Federal Reserve System works that prints our currency here, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Well, is it any different with Hell banknotes? Well, to quote a word, hell no. There are also several different banks which produce money for hell. These will follow. But here's stacks of already printed Hell banknotes on a counting table, await processing and distribution to the local earthly banks or Buddhist temples for use. Here we have one. Yes, they can dispense them out. There's a stack. You can buy 100 at a time if you'd like. But they have a yellow band, which has, notice the Emperor of Hell has lost his hair here. Quite different. Kind of spooky. The bank manager, AKA the Emperor of Hell of the Afterlife, or Lord of the Afterlife, it's a position, not a punishment, but it's a position of great honor and esteem, not evil and cruelty. This is a picture of what the bank manager, it says, is to look like. The Emperor of Hell, or the Afterlife, or the Lord of Hell, is its only banker. Doesn't have any competition. The legend has it that he was once a living Chinese emperor of great deeds who spread good will throughout his world. And as a reward for his great character and leadership, he earned the right to reign over the afterworld His name was Yen Lu Yu Wang, or Yu Wang. Sometimes it's the modern version that we'll see on the notes that are coming up. Young and old style. This is the note that's pictured here of the Afterlife note. It has both the young and old style. And this is the blurry picture. This is not the slide. This is exactly what the note looks like. This one here, we know it was done in 2001. So it's one of those mass produced Josh papers. But has a nice design. You can begin to see some of the similarities to regular world currency, US currency, beginning to appear in these notes. The reverse, well, the Bank of Hell is almost always pictured on most of the larger notes, 5x8 plus up. Here we have one at the top, shows a view, a pagoda style. Again, a slightly different one here, and the second lower one, the green one. And as we'll move on, we're going to talk about the various types of hell money issuers. And I'm going to go through, we have them numbered here. We're going to go through some of these because you'll notice the Hell Banknote will change name-wise. And first on the top is number one is your Hell Banknote. Says so right on the note. Above the arrow is the pagoda style of the Bank of Hell. The second one has an interesting one. If you take a look at the arrow where it says number 2, what does it say there? Currency for the underworld. Okay, so there's your bank. Move on to the next one. Where am I? Here we go. Now, number 3, which is the top one, 10,000. You'll notice here we have a name change again. Heaven Banknote. This is, to me, this is the fun of looking at these notes, not thinking they're all the same. Number 4, the next one down it, you'll notice that it has the Hell Banknote Corporation. This is a more modern one from the late 1990s. Look at that 10 trillion. Well, a couple of those we could burn and wipe out the US deficit in absolutely no time, I would say. Here we have one, a number 5 at the top. Now this is called, this is an interesting one. Here's the Bank of Inferno. I only found a few of these particular notes. But it is a value of 3. And lastly, number 6 coming up here is the Bank of Universal. Again, this is perhaps a more modern title following about 2009. So why do you think there are the large denominations of Hell Banknotes? Well, why would they want to be printed? Well, remember, they're being used in the afterlife. And so here are 4 plausible reasons. Number 1, everyone in the afterlife is wealthy beyond imagination. So with $1 trillion notes, I would assume that that's the case. Secondly, the afterlife has a very high cost of living, high rent. Okay, possible, plausible. Number 3, now that sounds more like it. Inflation is staggering and out of control, hence they need the large denominations. And 4 is the emperor of the afterlife, an extortionist and needs bribes. That's possible too. And we'll find out a little bit more as we move along. Answer, well, make your choices. But there are trillions and trillions and trillions of Hell Banknotes, aren't there? Here's one of the highest value notes that I've seen in a long time, 33.8 billion. And it has what? All the lucky Chinese numbers on it. 3, 8 throughout the note, and it's also in the Chinese as well. And if you note the focus of this particular note or the feature or the history behind it, it is spreading good luck. I wish the Vegas casinos or Atlantic City took these type of notes. We can make millions there and billions as well. But just look at the values and the color design. We'll go on to the higher ones. Here, above one is a 10 trillion and a 1 trillion denomination. Some cool designs. Could these notes be used to pay off ever-mounting debt? Sorry. only that debt in the afterlife that they're able to be used for. Well, the Hell Banknotes indicates one can take it with them. So those of you that are worried about passing on into the afterlife, as the Chinese mythology and legend says, you can deliver a fortune. And now this particular note at the top is 10 billion deliverance fortune. It says so right on the note. It's hard to see, it's up here on the top, but the bottom is the reverse of the 10 billion. And you could see it in the bottom. 10 deliverance fortune. That's not a bank. So it doesn't fall into one of our bank characters. But it is a need to pass on your fortune to your family and to your ancient relatives, dating back to almost the origins of mankind. Are you asking yourself, okay, how does a living relative of a deceased ancestor or family member make a bank deposit? It couldn't be simpler. It's easy and there's no waiting. You don't have to go to the bank to do it, nor do you need to use a bank app to do it. We saw it at the beginning. Making a deposit into the bank of hell is quick and painless, and it's done with fire. Prayer, burn it, and make a deposit in the name of the relative or ancestor that you're praying for. This can be done without waiting. You don't have to go to a worldly bank, but it can be done at a gravesite. Deposit burnt notes, are they collectible? I've got some of these. I grade these as good plus slightly crispy. So according to Chinese mythology and legend, why do the deceased need money in the afterlife? Well, we hinted at it about it earlier, but let's go on to find out exactly why. In the afterlife, I noted earlier, the deceased do the same things on earth as earthly dwellers, and it takes money. The travel, clothing, rent, coin collecting, golf, taxes, whatever. So in order to ensure that your relatives have money in the afterlife, you need to send them presents. And the best way, according to Chinese mythology, is to send them hell banknotes, money to live on and to spend in the afterworld. Values are printed on them, are high denominations, and can be sent as much as they want, as often as they want, daily, hourly, or minute by minute. Life in the afterlife goes on and costs money. Inhabitants, it's obvious, tend to spend lavishly awaiting their judgment. Other hell banknote issue forms for your enlightenment, all highly collectible. You may think that our program is only going to cover currency. Well, that's a part of it too. But where else do we find currency substitutes? I'm going to begin here with a few of those, and I think you'll find them interesting. At the top, we have an ATM, bus, light rail, or train pass. This is actually a hell banknote. Below that, we find a hell banknote passport for travel. Well, in the afterlife, you're surely going to need a passport to travel, much like you do here in the regular world. Now we get to have some fun. You fly by plane. The ANA has its convention coming up shortly in Chicago. And of course, I'm going to be flying from Los Angeles to Chicago. But here at the top, we have Hell Bank Airlines tickets and baggage claim checks. And this is drawn on the Otherworld bank. Okay, well, what about these plastic things? Note here we have a Visa, VESA, Hell Banknote Gold or Silver credit card, circa 1998. I have both of these. And we can have a little bit more. If you remember the old American Express commercials done by Carl Malden, don't leave home without them. And believe it or not, the Underworld or Otherworld has an American or an Otherworld Express card. No one should leave the Underworld home without it. And it's interesting. Notice the design is very similar to that of a regular credit card, American Express card. Looks like all the features. Now, if you turn the card over, I have this in my collection. I love this. But there's a place for the data on the card. It has a magnetic strip, so you can swipe it. Now, notice the second arrow. It's an authorized signature. I always wondered, not found one ever signed by anyone, but I wonder how these are used in the underworld. And what does it say down there? It tells about how to use them in conditions for the machines to be forced to use as. But the last one shows found. What do you do with the card? You burn it. Send it back to the underworld. That's assuming it gets out of the earthly world. Now we know why the X-Files people were involved. Hell Banknotes savings book, right? Because the bank is the emperor of hell, or the banker of hell got the time all day to sit around and fill out deposit books? Well, once you've been listed, once you've been taken into the afterlife, and your relatives send money, there is a Hell Banknote deposit savings book there. Always ready. Have you made your deposit this week? How about checks? A checkbook. Here we have a checkbook. Look at the lucky number on the account. Oh, those 2s and 8s. I'll tell you. There's 50 checks inside this book. Did I show both? No, I didn't have it. And since these type of methods of paying for things or money substitutes are being phased out, today we have this. Every iPad, every cell phone needs to have the official Hell Banknote app. These became available in 2010. All Hell Banknote information at your fingertips. Tells you how to burn notes, tells about the galleries, tells you about them, and they're being used. What about during the pandemic? I just put this slide in recently, but this is a hash cassette tape. Music to get high on, according to the binding around the particular cassette, while burning Hell Banknotes. So instead of just praying and humming, you can listen to a special music. Maybe you can boogie. Maybe you can dance to it. Maybe you can boogie, burn, inhale, and get a hash high from it. And here we find at the bottom an ancestor money issued by families as a result of this hash cassette tape. These are on their tables with the hash cassette tape being played in the background. Prosperity to burn. Well, will the underworld Hell Banknotes exchange Hell Banknote currency for gold? Again, hell yes. Hell Banknote currency exchange rates for gold. 100 trillion to 1/6 gold bar design. This whole particular thing here is about, I think it's about 3.5 by 4, and it has 6 individual gold bars on it. And so you can trade your paper in for the same thing in a paper gold at the daily exchange rate. One can obtain or purchase. Where can you obtain or purchase printed banknotes in all sorts of forms? Where can you get a credit card? Where can you get your app? Well, just about at any Chinatown store or even a local coin store may have them as well. Early purveyors of Hell Banknotes in the earthly world, aside from Buddhist temples. Well, here's a gentleman here that advertises he's a U.S. seller of Hell Banknotes. Zoom in real quick. I don't have the zoom here set up on this thing, but you'll notice towards the left, there's a strip running through the currency. Believe it or not, this is a magnetic strip to prevent, what do you think? Counterfeiting these Hell Banknotes in it. And we'll get to that in a little bit later. A place to buy Hell Banknotes. Well, here's a store, for example, I found in San Francisco. You cannot find the book you want, you're always looking for. Here's the obvious place to turn. And this is a place that sells tons and tons of currency. An example, this is what you can buy at one of those stores. Good place to start a collection. At a price of $5.50 plus tax, of course, in California. You can get a Hell Banknote package kit. And this particular style, we'll hear about its use in just a bit, but this is used for the Hungry Ghost Festival, which is yearly held here in Los Angeles, downtown at the Chinese and Buddhist Temple ceremonies and graves. Chinese mythology also says there are 2 yearly festivals in which Hell Banknotes are commonly used. Now we're going to take a look at these. These are fascinating because these are specially printed, Hell Banknotes for that particular purpose. The first one is the Festival of Pure Brightness. These 2 yearly celebrations happen. Now the top note is dubbed the Festival of Lights. And the note is peaceful looking with friendly dragons, which are portrayed on the note, up and down. Not at all like the breathing and destructive cruel of the Western style. But what does the Festival of Lightness do? It doesn't have an exact date because you have to have the certain souls. You got to have a Chinese calendar to figure out which day of each year it is. So it's hard to pinpoint it, but it's usually around the April 4th date every year. It's called the Qian or Qing Festival Ceremony. The date here, this is from, I don't have a date here, but a sample of the Hell Banknote used during that festival and made different designs and depict different ages and relatives on it. These are more modern styles. But what is this particular ceremony? Well, let's take a look what Chinese do on that particular day. We have July 4th, we celebrate with barbecues. We have other holidays to support Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Well, Chimney Festival, the Festival of Brightness, honors departed family, relatives, and ancestors. And here's a photograph from Hong Kong of relatives gathering in a cemetery. But if you look closely, well, what are they doing? Well, let's find out what this ceremony is. The Qingming Festival, the yearly cleaning of tombs, cemeteries, and grave sites of the departed. Families of relatives and ancestors come carrying bags of flowers as a tradition, as well as festival notes like these. View the cleaning and prayer and reconnection with their ancestors. And so the second one is easier to pin down. It's called the Festival of Ghosts. Takes place yearly on the night of, get this, April 15th, our tax day. Legend has it that ghosts of the deceased walk among the living on that particular evening. Get your Festival of Ghosts notes. They're sold out in front of every sidewalk vendor in many cities. These, again, mostly are in Hong Kong or Macau. But notice here we have just an individual sitting, currency out, got the little punks, if you want to call that, to light the notes. But here below it, we find ghosts walking the streets. And where is the FBI X-Files agents when you need them? Here are the living ghosts that walk among it. Well, as usual, the FBI is busy with important business. Coffee break. Wait a minute. Then a long night search for the Hungry Ghost begins. The Hungry Ghost Festival allows for dispersion of Hell Banknotes by simply tossing them into the air into massive piles for the ghosts to take back with them. So you don't always have to burn Hell Banknotes. And here we see a massive pile of notes. Fire hazard waiting to happen. And you're going to see that fire hazard in a moment. The second method, of course, involves burning Hell Banknotes in piles. And throughout the public streets, especially in Hong Kong, it's a time when families get a chance to participate. And kids love this particular festival because they are permitted on this occasion to light fires or to light hell banknotes and create bonfires in public. This is outside a residence in Hong Kong, where a massive stack of hell banknotes has been set up. And of course, they're already burning and on fire. Faster services to burn them, of course. This is a street side, a business area, street bonfires burning hell banknotes. A $10 billion value, for example, burned. This is the typical type that you would find and use in that particular thing. Notice again the fish, designed for symbolism, the chrysanthemum, peace, joy, bringing joy and peace around the world. The skies throughout the hillsides and the streets in Hong Kong. Again, I don't think they're still doing it today. They might still be. But they used to just light up. The plane flying over, you could see these bonfires all over. So as we begin to wind down our presentation, I've always been asked, well, we can collect error notes, just like those found in real paper money. And if you, like I say, I like to have fun. And here we have an example of a fold over. You can see the fold over here over the two kings of hell, or the emperors. How about a cutting error? Or surely they happen everywhere. But nice little things to have, special ones. How about a mule? This is the only note I've ever paid $25 for. I don't know why, but I had to have it. We have the reverse of a 20 on the obverse of a $100 note. I just folded it over here so you could see the two differences. These are not too common. They just happen to be when they're printed and done differently. But this is also with the mule. Note the metal strip, as I mentioned earlier, to deter counterfeiting. Right here through the number 100. Whoops. Yes, metal strip to deter. Boy, they sure go into a lot of work for these hell banknotes for protection. And yet, in just a few minutes, they're going to be poof up into smoke. If you want to have some real fun with the hobby, you can put together an assortment of earthly hell banknotes issued by countries from around the world. And I'm going to quickly go through this because you think, well, they're only going to be in China, they're only going to be in Hong Kong. Well, you'd be surprised how many countries, how many Chinese Buddhist temples have issued, hell banknotes. Here we have one from Hong Kong. Look at the beautiful bird of paradise, wishing happiness, love, success, from 1990. Here's a similar one. Now, this one happens to be an advertisement issue from Macau from 2000, advertising everybody should have what? Refrigerator, stove, and a microwave. Of course, made in what? Hong Kong. Mainland China. This is where the heaven banknote comes in. This is a 1998 one. Interesting, the note below it is a Mao political satire hell banknote from 1998. The government, of course, today frowns on that in mainland China. Taiwan. We saw this one earlier. Look at the things, look at what it can buy. A house, a car, denote great financial wealth. That's what the folks in Taiwan like to show off. Here we have some of the more beautiful notes. Now, these are on thicker paper. This is a Singapore issue. They have all sorts of birds and designs. Look at the beautiful, intricate artwork. It's a hell banknote. Great Britain. Well, Hong Kong was what? A British colony until 1997. Here we have a heaven banknote for 10,000 pounds. See, it's an overprint too. You notice the 10,000, the pound part was put. Interesting. Of course, Great Britain would not be the same without the Bank of AKA Queen Elizabeth, depicted. Now notice this is also an overlay. It's printed underneath, it's actually underneath an airplane, underneath it from the bank for 1,000. Cambodia, again, a little bit different style. They have a fire-breathing dragon. And of course, the number is 9999999. I'm not speaking German either. It's a Cambodia issue. Canada, this is actually one of the new Josh papers. Couldn't find any earlier ones from Canada, though I have them probably in the stack somewhere. But here's $10 million. Now notice it says Canada. Okay. This is the reverse on it, printed differently. This is one of the mass-produced issues. They're all eights. Canadian note. Looks a lot like a regular banknote issue, except for the paper. Of course, the United States has hundreds. This one is from California, Chinatowns, which is a popular design. Now, notice it says a particular design. Now, these, what I understand from talking with shopkeepers, they make them there to order. So if you would like to have your portrait on a Hell Banknote, particular Chinatown, I'll give the name if anybody wants it later on, but they're interested in California, will print here. Instead of putting the Emperor of Hell, they will work your imprint in there to that. Kind of interesting. Modern US designs, well, look at these. Oh boy. Could you tell if these were real from just the photograph here? Be hard to tell. Of course, the paper would give it away. But notice the reverse. Notice the obverse. Ben Franklin on the 100. Here we have a USA new colorized version. This is a series from 2006, but I add this one because of the simple thing. The first top arrow on the left, a note of what currency in the ghostdom. That's ghostdom. Now notice whose signatures appear on these notes. What do you want to call it? The U.S. Treasurer at the time of U.S. notes being Mary Ellen Withrow, and Robert E. Rubin being the Secretary of the Treasury. Kind of interesting they would put these particular notes. This is a Hell Banknote Corporation note. And of course, up here with the serial number, 2006, that tells you the issue and the value and the number. I find it interesting that they would so copy our notes here in the United States. Here's a Vietnam. You speak that from being in Vietnam. We find out here, I know it's Vietnam. Well, Dong gives it away because their currency denomination value. So it has the kings there. And again, look at the reverse. Very similar to some of the U.S. currency designs. Indonesia, again, these are beautiful. And these are the ones that I like from Indonesia because in the center, they have beautiful watermarks of the Emperor of Hell, almost on every note. I've had to bring up the light in the background so you can see it. Normally you can't see it, but a watermark. Of course, why is there a watermark there? To prevent counterfeiting. Interesting what they'll do again in Hell Banknotes. Thailand, completely different one. Here's a Japanese spoof. It was sent to me by a friend. Philippine issue. This is kind of interesting from the year 2000, but it's in both what? Euro and pesos, their denominations. On the obverse on the left, below the Emperor of Hell, where the arrow is, that is the word it's in Latin and it's in euro. 100 euros. Not too shabby to have. That's a nicely printed note, again, on very thin paper. And below we find the peso, which is for to be used in the Philippines. Tibet region issue, most likely commemorative issue, but again, this is Dalai Lama on a $50 note. The reverse with the watermark. You notice on both the obverse and reverse, the watermark of the Dalai Lama shows up as well in the currency. It's a lot of work to do that. Yet for a simple note that you can buy for 25 cents. These are some of my favorites, the political satire notes. This one from 1980. Top was a genuine 1980 China 100 note. Bottom, a Hell Banknote satire of 4 emperors. Might be interesting to note that this would be a good hand while you're playing 5-card stud, poker, or anywhere else. Do four kings or emperors beat 4 Chinese leaders or emperors? I don't know. But again, I just find this fascinating. Well, avid collectors like myself prefer banknotes from the 1900s to 1990 and not the Josh paper issues because they stopped afterwards. This has been the latest addition to my collection, and it's from Canada, but it's a Donald Trump 2002 for president issue. I wish I could have blown it up more, but it's interesting. This is the first time we've had that particular thing enter into a political race, whether it's in any country aside from China. And if you get tired of collecting the paper notes, well, there's also a whole other topic, a whole other area. Hell or ghost coins for collectibles. This is a whole separate talk, but it ties in here to our talk. Well, in closing, Hell Banknotes to me is a fun hobby. The investment costs a minimum. At the mere 5 cents, maybe up to $1. And you can go through a cherry picker's box at a dealer's table. Even the large, colorful 18.5 by Evans, depending, can cost maybe $4 or $5. Usually they'll pay you to take them. But to me, I find different designs, little errors, and I collect them. I hate to show you the stack that I have here, but it's a huge stack of Hell Banknotes. They are available, of course, in any Buddhist temple, shrine, cemetery, but they ask for a cash donation. I never tried to take one without offering a donation. Most Chinatown curio shops and restaurants in the United States, in Chinatown, have them and sell them for $1, $2 each. Sometimes you can receive one if you simply have a meal there. Sometimes the placemat on which your meal is served, advertising the restaurant, features a Hell Banknote. Ask your server for a clean one. They'll often allow you to take one home. Canada has the largest active Hell Banknote Club collectors group with a great newsletter. And I'll tell you, the illustrations and information and history that those collectors share, and I'm a part of that as well, is unbelievable. If you want to learn more about it, there's one major book that was put out in the year 2019. There's an updated version I understand now. I haven't got it yet. But it's on Hell Banknotes by Ostromecki. And so, yes, our X-Files people, along with myself and other collectors, Hell Banknotes are out there. I'd like to leave you with the Chinese wise man's saying, which is on the right here, which was given to this guest speaker. If you look closely, you'll find out I had to be made up for this particular talk that I gave. But if someone always asks to borrow money from you and never returns it, then next time offer them Hell Banknotes instead. You won't have to worry. Well, it's time to say the hell with this bunny, the hell with this banknote. And perhaps Portia here gives a final blow to the collection. Hell Banknote below that, of course, is one of the personal ones that I had made up when I give these talks to clubs and groups locally, that I give out at the end. It's a 5,000 one. And I hope you enjoyed this brief overview. There's a lot to collect. I wish I could spend hours talking about it. There's great history and collecting behind it. And so here, I would normally give you, but I'm going to send each one of you here via Fire, a starter Hell Banknote, an Ostromecki 2021 issue. Now you know how to send it, spend it, or address it to me. if you want to deposit it in my Bank of Hell. With that, Logan, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you again, Walt. You always have wonderful presentations, and we're very happy to always have you on here. And thanks again to Graysheet for supporting our ANA eLearning Academy. For those of you who are attending the World's Fair of Money, we hope to see you there. And for those who can't, we will be having some of our money talks on the Thursday of the show streamed onto Zoom. So we hope you can join us for those so you can get a little bit of a taste of the World's Fair of Money. We thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you around. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.